Hey everybody, it's Great Mondays Radio. Welcome back. I'm very excited to talk to a gentleman here who is thinking a lot about the future of work. I've been talking a lot about the future of work and how we're really still struggling with kind of defining what that means. And we're in this moment of, well, should we do it like we used to do, or should we do something different? And if so, what does that look like? Joost Schouten is the founder of Nestor.io, and I met Joost at a conference, and I thought what he's working on was super interesting and very relevant to the topics that we've been covering on Great Mondays Radio, as well as what I'm super interested in, the future of work, and more specifically, self organizing or self-directed organizations. So Yost has been working on some software about this, so that means he's been thinking a lot about it. Yost, thanks for coming on Great Mondays Radio.
Here.
We were working on how to pronounce his name, and I still fucked it up. All right, okay, Yost. Your product is it's called Nestor, and it's well, let's start with why did you decide to well, describe what it is, and then why is this what you're going to spend your life, your precious hours on Earth on this thing?
Yeah, wonderful. Well, the simplest way I usually introduce Nestor is a collaboration software for tomorrow's organizations, and that triggers enough questions that we can dive into what that means. In the basis, that means we offer a solution for role-based work where everyone in the organization can actually continuously iterate and redefine their own roles, create new ones, and actually continuously improve the dynamic org chart so that we have complete clarity of what the organizational structure is like and actually impact that so that you can let great culture show up and thrive rather than try to direct that from a top-down management solution. Now, there's lots of intricacies, and I'm happy to explore that. And why am I doing that?
Yeah.
It's kind of been the thread through my entire career, and it kind of started at the beginning of my career. I started my career with General Electric back in 2001. And there, one morning, I showed up, and out of the 600 people in the headquarters there, 100 were out on the sidewalk with a box in their hands, and that made me wonder, what are we doing? Why is this how we work? Why did nobody know that up front? And so that entire that experience was quite formative for me and made me question the way we organize. And initially, then quite quickly, I decided to resign and buy a book on teach yourself programming and a laptop. And I thought I'm going to build software to liberate the employees. That was my initial idea. Being a 22-year-old, I thought I'm going to fix this one.
Viva
I
los
haven't, I
employees.
haven't, but I'm still on that trajectory. And over the years, I have refined and put some nuance to what I believe is needed. Because information alone doesn't solve the problem. That was my initial instinct.
Right.
Uh, but slowly, I've moved more and more to, okay, how are we structured? How do we structure our organizations, and how do we incentivize that, and how do we actually give people the tools to process what they see is needed in the organization properly rather than through delegation and command and control and management hierarchy, because those tools have obviously shown not to be sufficient for today's world. So what
Yeah.
comes next? Let's experiment, and that's really where I'm at and where I love to be working. And Nestor is one expression of exactly that.
Earlier this year, I recorded two conversations that are directly connected, I think, to this work. One with Rod Collins and the other with Doug Kirkpatrick. And they both are advocates for self-organizing teams and sort of self-directed organizations, I think is the way that they talk about it. And I encourage our listeners to go back and listen to those. They're very interesting if this is something you want to dig deeper into. The for me, what I see and why this sparks for me, and this topic is constantly chewing on and thinking about, is that it has just become apparent to me that we spend too much time, energy, and money on the management part of it, on, like you said, the top down and the structure. And why can't that be something? And this is what you helped me kind of clarify. Why can't that piece be softwareized, right? Like, why can't, is it possible that the benefits that software has brought companies and customers, why can't we turn that on the company itself and think about, what are the things that can be automated or learned or thought and not need this um, so much resource overhead on unnecessary meetings and structures and those types of things.
Yeah.
Is that aligned with kind of what you're thinking? Is that what you're headed towards, or am I mischaracterizing it?
It's part of it. And it's a bit of a tricky one to give a one size fits all answer because that's the entire challenge here, right? So we have this organizational model that we apply to all our organization and it's management hierarchy, and it's kind of not questioned. So most of the innovation that happens within the confines of management hierarchy.
Hmm.
Can we get the most out of this system where questioning that system in and of itself is quite a reasonable question to ask. I know, like, authoritarianism is something that is not allowed in our societies, though in today's political climate that's questionable, but let's park that. Um, but in organizations, that's what we do. That's the norm. We fully accept that we are subjected to authority structures that can completely tell us what to do. Um, And that's a bit strange to me. Why can we not change that? Because there's so many benefits to be gained for both the people that are subjected to it, as well as in the organizations, to really use and utilize all the wonderful skills that people bring that they keep to themselves, either explicitly or because they're unaware, because they can't show up with a level of anxiety that is just inherent to power structures. So, what if we can actually slowly move away from those limiting power structures to enable people to show up fully and bring their gifts that they have to offer to an organization? But that does require us to innovate and reassess those authority structures and the incentives that come with them. Uh,
I mean, I'll just repeat what you said because I think it's so um, interesting and almost like mind bending, which is we all live within one schema, one framework of how a company should be organized, but that's not the only one, right? So
mm,
all of a sudden, you're living inside the matrix, and you're like, wait a minute, you wake up and you're like, there are other ways to do this, and I think that's what I'm struggling with as well, which is we now are in a distributed society, distributed work, and that distributed can mean work from home 1 day a week to 5 days a week. And we are already moving in this self sufficiency direction. And I'm looking at these managers and leaders and executives freaking out. And I don't
mm,
think that's overstating it because they can't see. They can't
yeah,
see what their employees are doing.
yeah,
And so instead of rethinking the premise, they're trying to see harder, right? Like, what are you doing? Or come back into the office, or you have what is it, Nannyware or whatever that's on the laptop,
yeah,
software that's tracking what you're doing, and that it just feels so short-sighted. So, what are you realizing or seeing emerge from all of this? I'm interested in the software itself, and that's fine. But more, what are you learning? What are you
yeah,
seeing as far as how organizations are applying it? What are some assumptions that you made
yeah,
that are incorrect? Like, let's understand if you're actually thinking through how companies should actually apply this. What have you learned so far?
yeah. Yeah, maybe a tiny bit of context because, like, yes, the software is interesting, but let's park that for a second. I have also shown up as a consultant for 10 years, helping organizations through this transition, right? So I'm tapping
Great.
into mostly that experience rather than necessarily just the
Okay,
software.
great.
Uh, um, and I'm trying to figure out where to go right now because there's so many things we can explore here. Um, And maybe I want to touch back a little bit about um, the managers and what they want and what their challenges are. I think that is um, a symptom of seeing the changes coming and trying to adapt to that, but using the tools of management hierarchy to fix it, right? So there's a paradigm shift that I think you would want to go through from a command and control. We can predict the future and we gonna control organization in that direction, right? So that's the conventional methodology, and there's many different ways to do it, but there's a command and control element to our conventional organizations to sense and respond. Right. So how can we as an organization be really adaptive and responsive to our changing environment? And to do that well, you need to enable your everyone within the organization to be a sensor. Wonderful thing. They already do that, but also a responder and actually give people the
Mm.
tool and the possibility to respond and actually act upon that rather than go through an approval process to get a change through, right? If I, within my role or within my roles, sense a change is coming and something needs to be changed, I should be able to change it. Unless we have made explicit that that's harmful, and then we don't do that, or we need to integrate whatever perspectives. But those tools of making those changes should be available to everyone. If I see within my team a problem and I want to address it, and it needs to be a structural problem, I need to change the role of one of my peers so that I can depend on them better. I should be able to propose that change, and then we don't need a manager or anyone else to say, yes, that's a right or that's not a right. No, we know our reality best. Let's actually get our internal agreements sorted out amongst each other. Why should the rest of the organization care? We get better at delivering value doing that. So that's really a part of um, a key element of role-based work, of self-organization, so that shaping the roles of the organization with the entire organization. And that doesn't mean conventional management no longer have authority. They can use exactly those same tools and they can actually do it quicker and faster because they're not burdened by having to do that for the entire organization or burdened by delegation in detail all the time because you empower the entire organization to act by themselves. What you in effect do, you make everyone a manager rather than eliminate the managers.
Oh, oh,
Everyone
oh, oh.
already connect.
Oh,
And that,
that's interesting. Keep
mm.
going. Sorry. Yeah, yeah.
Well, maybe I'll park there because otherwise I'll dive into a monologue and
Yeah,
then I
yeah.
think we bounce off each other a little bit.
Thank you. Okay, so right. So here I mean kind of I think there's a lot of dialogue over the years, flatten the hierarchy, get rid of the managers. But your framework, your perception is make everybody a manager, and every manager is has the authority to sense and respond. That's the key of it.
Yeah. And let me reframe it a little bit because it's not make everyone a manager because there's so much attached to our association what a manager is.
Okay,
But
let's push it
uh,
forward.
if you move to another form of organization, the work that managers do today still needs to happen. It's really important work to set strategy or to create clarity or to do work across different teams or organization, whatever it is that the manager is doing. Um, but that management work can be done by anyone and everyone, so that the today's managers can focus on what their core competencies are, whatever they are, which is often you're promoted into it and it's not necessarily where you want to be at.
Hmm.
But then you can figure out again, okay, what is it that I'm really good at and shape that reality. It's one of the an anecdote, maybe quickly to a realization when I really thought, yeah, this is my line of work. This is why I love doing it. One of the first projects I did around self-organization, I started there implementing Scrum, helping a team to get better at their their Scrum implementation, and I realized that they had some challenges, and there's actually quite a few people that were about to leave the organization because they were that deeply frustrated. They couldn't make changes happen. Um, I proposed, hey, let's experiment with self-organization. And to my surprise, they said, yeah, let's do it. Got myself schooled and figured out what I actually needed to be doing, and we did some experiments. And 3 months, fast forward 3 months later, that same guy that was about to leave was really happy in his job after he reshaped the roles he filled. He created a couple of new roles, applied to fill those roles, got accepted, and all of a sudden moved to really enjoying his work because he had the tools to shape his reality so that he could thrive with his competencies. And that was such an eye-opener for me, because everyone is able and capable of that. Often you hear the argument that self-organization is not for everyone. There's lots of people that are not able to take that initiative. And I think that's a lot of BS, because it's beaten out of them over time. Um,
That's yeah.
like as soon as you leave the front door of your organization, you know exactly what to do in your own life. We all can take initiative. We're all entrepreneurial. We can all figure out what grocery to go to, or buy a house, find a partner, all of those things.
This
That
is ex
initiative
this is
can
exactly what Doug said. Yeah.
well,
Why
nice.
not? Right? You're like, you don't have a manager in your life.
Yeah, exactly. And so it is context, not the people. So, and who shapes that context? Organization. So, if you find that people not taking initiative, what is happening? They carry anxiety show coming into your organization, and you need to figure out where that anxiety is coming from and how to undo it so that they can show up without anxiety. Because anxiety is the creativity killer, um, and
Hmm.
it's deep. It's not something that you just do over a course of a couple of months. I think this is a process of decades for us as a society to tackle and to figure out why we're also anxious in our work. But small changes go a long way already. And we also don't have to change our organizations completely overnight, right? There's lots of small experiments to start with. Within the confines of a team, you can have role-based work as long as you set the parameters properly, as long as you don't come at it with now we are fully freeing you to do whatever you want, and you can do, we're all going to Valhalla. But no, within the confines of this experiment, this is what we can do. And then you can actually see quite a lot of progress already, like the anecdote I just shared.
So you keep saying rule-based work. Tell me what rules are we talking about?
What I'm actually saying, and that might be my next, is role-based work.
Role-based work. Okay,
But
role-based work.
it's not far off from rule-based work, but there's a lot of association and negative association to rules because it's often um, the pain of rules is they're imposed on you and you don't like that. Where if you can impact those rules and change them yourself, they're no longer rules, they're agreements because you step into them. So, and that is kind of the essence of role-based work, is because what are roles other than agreement between a role filler and the organization? What can we expect from each other? The shift from management hierarchy, which does that as well, right? You get a function profile and there's an org chart. The problem is it's never used, it's outdated, and culture or implicit hierarchies really rule the day. So, if you want people to thrive, you need to get rid of the anxiety that we show up with, which means you need to make people give people a pathway to impact the rules that apply to them. And roles is the most predominant form that these rules show up, right? What is expected of me, and what can I expect of my colleagues? And if I have a process to impact that, if I can change that agreement tomorrow because reality asks it,
Hmm.
um, then all of a sudden I can impact my the rules that I am bound by, and I no longer have to be anxious because there's not something that I can't impact, and I can shape the reality that serves me and the organization. So let's not forget that, right? This is not by the people for the people. No, it is for the organizational purpose, right? We're here to do a job, and we're here to make an impact of sorts. So you need to like all these systems that are out there, and there's many experiments being done. I'd like to name a few. There's sociocracy, holacracy, teal practices. There's a bunch of them out there. They are all structured in such a way that you can make sure that whatever decisions are being made serve the organization, um, and that's explicit, right? So that's often a misconception by people when you talk about self-organization. Say, "Woohoo! I can now finally do whatever I want, and I'm gonna just I don't know sabotage the whole lot because they paid me for so long." No, you can't. Like, I'm sorry you feel sabotage. You feel the pain, and how can we serve you in that? But we're here to do a job, and let's make sure we do that well.
How, so you talked before about creating a new rule for yourself or for others. So is that one of the ways that someone can sense and respond?
Yeah.
Like or change their own rule, I suppose. But what is the trigger for creating a new role? Because you've mentioned it. It seems like it's an important part of
Mm,
the the concept that you're moving forward with, because you've said
yeah.
it a few times. So talk to me about what is the impetus for when as a participant,
Yeah.
when would I create a new role?
Whenever you feel there's one needed. It's as simple as that, right? So and roles are smaller because what in today's world, when we talk about roles, we often equate them with functions. Like, I fill one role. Now, the I think one of the massive benefits of this paradigm shift is, no, you have a portfolio of roles. You already do that today, by the way. You just haven't made it explicit. It's really wonderful to move from the process. Hey, let's do a role mapping exercise with our team or organization and realize you've got 20 roles. And then I
Oh.
personally, in my own software, I label my roles with enriching and draining, right? So I have a portfolio of about 15 roles in my organization, and about five are enriching, five are draining, and a bunch of others I have neutral. I don't really care so much for. I want to get rid of those that I find draining because they're not serving me. And I want to really focus on the ones that are enriching for me. Like, and sometimes I realize, hey, I actually do work. Whenever needs to be done, I pick it up. But let's make sure we are explicit about that, both towards the organization and myself, that is value that I'm bringing. So if you find yourself doing something that has not been made explicit to the organization, that's a good reason to say, hey, I need to create a new role. And it can be very small. It can be, hey, every month I send a newsletter and it's not captured anywhere. If I go on a holiday or a sabbatical or a leave next year, the organization needs to know about this important work that I'm doing. So let's make sure we put that into a role, newsletter role, one accountability, monthly newsletter sent out. Wonderful. That's it. It can be that small. And then if no one sees harm with it, and that's also a difference, right? If no one within your team sees harm in that proposal, it's just going to be accepted. If there
Hmm.
is harm for that new role, then we integrate that and figure out how to navigate that. And there's different ways of doing that, probably beyond the scope of this podcast today.
uh, Everybody has to do things that are probably draining
Yeah.
in what they do. Uh, uh, but you kind of have to do them, or is that an assumption that I've just made over the decades, like you've said? Like, what does it mean to um, have to want to get rid of a detracting, a draining role inside of at your organization? Like what, or in your capacity? Is it, do you have to go pawn it off on somebody, convince someone else that it needs to get done? How does that work?
Um, Not specified, not quite sure. The fact that I still have them means I'm well aware that it needs to be done. It just, the wonderful thing is that we need, if that takes too long, it means we need to attract other people because obviously no one else in the organization finds them enriching. Um, Perhaps we need to find somebody that has the core competencies that does really like that role, so
Mm.
that I can hand them over. Um,
Mm.
there's also like a fun so we use holacracy within our organization, and there is a anyone at any time can drop a role, right? I can just drop those draining roles, but we also have a process by which I fill another role that makes me immediately accountable for any role that doesn't have a role filler. So me dropping that role doesn't really make a big change. So uh, and that's a
Okay.
wonderful incentive for me
Yeah.
to ensure that we hire new people to fill those roles, right?
Yeah.
If I don't want to be doing that work,
Yeah.
so and in that you see that these systems are set up to serve the organizational purpose, not necessarily this idea of kumbaya, it's all for the people. No, those rules are there. They're annoying for me. It means I need to do work sometimes that I don't like, but
Right.
that's wonderful because we're here to do a job, but to serve a purpose. Um,
How is this the same or different than another concept that I've brought up a couple times that I think has a lot of value, which is team level agreements. I mean, is that team level agreements is kind of let's see, if I were to real time kind of place it in the context of this conversation, it's a sort of a microcosm of what we're discussing, where you're like, hey, we're getting together to do this project. Here's how we're going to do it. Here, usually it's about communication and approval, right, or conflict. Is
yeah.
that are we in the same universe? Is that something that yeah, that's I'm sort of interpreting it correctly?
Yep. So it's just another agreement that we agree upon together, right? I think there might be differences in how decisions are made, right? How do you decide on that? Is that do we all have to agree? Do we find a consensus, a consent? Do we compromise? Like so, there's many ways to get to that, and I think self-organization and specifically the flavors that have been around for a couple of decades or a decade have some really elegant, good answers as to okay, how do you deal with the fact that people don't always agree? Because agreeing is a terrible way to make a collective decision, especially if your organization gets a bit bigger.
Yep.
Um, so there's consent where you say, no, you need to show objective harm to stop any organization or any decision. All right, so that's a wonderful way to stimulate innovation. It means that anyone can pretty much move forward unless somebody can show objective harm. We're going to try it and we're going to learn from it, and we're going to do that really transparently, so we can instantly step in if we see that any harm arises out of whatever we decided.
So it's almost it sounds to me like it's the antithesis of the way organizations run now. Organizations run now defer to the status quo. And you have to make a case and you have to really be able to say this, we have to experiment with it. And then we can say it's okay to go. And then maybe even that gets canceled. Whereas
Yeah,
the way that you're describing how you've created this or imagine or advise is, hey, the assumption is you can make a change, you can do a thing unless
yeah,
someone says they've demonstrated that you can't,
yeah,
which I really like because we've for over probably for 2 decades now, everybody's been really like consumed with innovation. And it's
yeah.
such a mystery why big organizations can't get it right. Well, it's just
I
because
don't. Yeah.
they define their role that's what they're trying to do is essentially it's the way the organism works is I don't want anything to change.
No. Well, and I think that is a symptom of the same anxiety that I talked about earlier, right? So if
Exactly.
um,
Yeah.
I I best not make a mistake. Um, so like good luck innovating that. Like there's a reason why big organizations try to emulate startup incubators and isolate them from the entire organization because they realize we can't do it. It's a bit baffling to me that they don't fix the systemic causes of that. But good on them for that innovation to try something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
I say let's look at our authority structures and start to innovate around how we make collective decisions. So we can drop some of that anxiety and innovate and learn and just accept the fact that we're going to make mistakes, but that's fuel for improving tomorrow rather than something to be avoided today.
What is one change that someone inside of an organization, a team leader, can make today that might help move them towards a role-based organization or self-directed organization.
Yeah. Well, and that's a nice link back to the software part. It is to map your the roles in your team, and there's some really simple mapping exercises, and I'm happy to share some resources around that,
That
where
sounds
you
good.
can.
We'll put them in the show notes.
Nice. Where, so what is the entire portfolio of roles in an organization? And that is more than the number of people in your organization. Usually, most people have two, three, sometimes five or 15 roles. Um, and if you look at that entire map and then you place that onto people, that is a wonderful aha moment. And place that onto people means what they are doing today, right? Not necessarily what you want them to do. That's a wonderful aha moment for people to really say, oh, that's what I do. Shit, that's actually quite a lot. How wonderful. How much value am I bringing? But also, hey, I want to get rid of that, or I need some help with that. And then in feedback rounds, um, that gets hugely beneficial as well, because when we do feedback on the person, and then you kind of you compromise across all their roles in one go and say, oh, you're doing pretty well. Where actually you might be seeing somebody that is awesome in their developer role, but they kind of suck in their, I don't know, marketing part that they're doing. Um, and then to really separate that out and to give feedback on a role by role basis, you can really start to get clarity on where they're thriving and where they need support of what they probably shouldn't be doing at all because they might not like it. But you can only get that clarity if you separate out the different values that somebody brings in that role mapping exercise. So there's within the context of a conventional organization without tackling I don't know, incentive structures and ownership structures, which is really, really hard and probably a couple of decades down the road. Within a team, that role mapping exercise gets really useful. And then especially if keep doing that, keep using that within your team and actually realize when you're doing work, from which role am I doing this? And can this be expected of me? Or if a colleague comes up to you, say, hey, can you pick this up? Say, well, from which role are you asking that to what role? Like that feels a bit unnatural, but it's really useful because it allows you to create focus based on your shared agreements. Say, oh, well, that's not quite expected of me. I'm not going to prioritize that right now because the opportunity cost is that I won't be developing. And I want to be really good at what is expected of me and really deliver
Mm,
on what you guys can expect of me.
mm-hmm,
It's
mm-hmm.
a note to you, but go to Joe. Joe seems to fill a role something around marketing. So you actually have that living org chart that you can use today, and it doesn't take so much. It will plant the seeds of thinking about your shared agreements differently, and also give to people the tools to create focus and help them prioritize what is actually expected of them.
Joost Schouten of Nestor. You can find out more about his product, nestr.io, nestor.io. It's This was a really fascinating conversation. There were so many different paths that we could have gone down. There's so much to talk about, but I really appreciate you kind of helping me think through kind of the challenge that I think we're all collectively facing, and maybe hopefully you'll be part of this transformation that I think we're all going to be going through in the next decade or so. Thanks for coming on Great Mondays Radio.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Joe. Thank you so much.